Back in the saddle. At least it didn't take 3 years this time around. Get ready. This is gonna be a long video. This show's bad. We pick back up in the living room of wherever it is the gang's staying, where Crow kindly informs Orange Boy, currently Ozpin, that things aren't looking good. Go figure, I guess that's good to know. Ozpin notes that things could be much worse, and something humanity is resilient. Crow responds in turn by saying that pro-huntsmen don't just die all at once, and that Salem's likely the cause. I mean, sure, and it is probably Salem, but if they were to all just kick it at once, it seems to follow someone would notice pretty quickly, right? Surely the synapses would begin to fire in someone's brain, telling them it's a little bit weird that suddenly all the huntsmen are gone. But somehow you, who got here like a month ago, were the first to discover this very evident and extremely distressing fact? Does the whole of Mistral have the collective reasoning power of early ChatGPT? RWBY comes into the room. I know, just bear with me. And for once, actually asks a good question. If I'm sick of this Medusa thing. You get to be Cinder. Fine. If Cinder's the Fall Maiden, then does Salem have the relic from Beacon? Apparently not. Ozpin said he made finding the relic at Beacon, and I quote, a bit more challenging than the others. That is vague. I would have figured they'd be hard to get to start with, but even if we go with that, I can't imagine Salem would just give up on it. I mean, regardless of whether or not it takes some extra effort to find, it's basically a free relic now that you royally fucked up in defending your own school. She already basically tore Beacon down around it, killed you, and got all the people that were supposed to be the relic's defenders to leave instantly. The place is still overrun by her Grim. Why not keep looking? But whatever, we don't think about things like that here. Ozpin's cane is not a relic, in case you wanted to know. Crow gets a call from Lionheart, who tells him he's had a breakthrough with the Council, and wants them all to meet him the following day to walk through their plans to raid the Bronwyn camp. It was a fucking nuclear mistake, revealing that this guy was in business with the Funky Bunch before the season even started. But we'll give that some more time later. Lionheart. He's in his office with Raven, which unfortunately means I have to listen to more of Raven. I do it so you don't have to. Lionheart tells Raven he betrayed Ozpin for the same reason that she did, being that he's afraid of her. He says there's no stopping her and all the typical blah blah blah, and also expresses remorse for having done things Ozpin could never forgive and shouldn't. Keep this tucked away in your noggin, because we are going to come back to this. But fortunately for us, our weak minds, Raven Bronwyn, the enlightened soul, is in the room, which means we get to hear more of her biting, insightful commentary. Kill me. Man up, Lionheart. You did what you needed to do to survive. You know the drill. Nothing Raven doesn't say every time she's on screen. Unsurprisingly, this doesn't help much, and Raven storms off. My ears are happy for the time being. Never mind, we're back at Blake's house. Okay, Blake's mom is... Here we go. Oh, shit. Blake's mom is standing out in the open without cover or armor to speak of. Of course. How fucking badly trained are these White Fang guys that they can't land a single shot on an open target of this size? Standing wide open, zero cover, leaning forward so she can't readily evade anything, no armor. Like, this is a fucking Half-Life 1 AI you're dealing with. Aren't you guys supposed to be foot soldiers? This should be easier than target practice. She's not moving. How the fuck do you manage to hit the armored guard taking cover behind her before you hit her? What the fuck is happening? She runs out of ammo and proceeds to throw her gun on the ground in anger instead of immediately getting behind cover, of course. She then grabs whatever that is. I've seen it before. I'm not sure what to call it. It's that thing white people put on top of coffee tables. Let's call it a cookie pan for time's sake. She holds the cookie pan out in front of her to block a shot that conveniently connects directly with it, instead of getting behind cover, of course. And then, instead of getting behind cover, she turns her attention away from the people shooting at her and toward the guard who's being smart and taking cover, and asks her if she has any better ideas. Yeah, actually, she does. The better idea in question being taking cover. Why aren't you dead? This shit would... I guess it is hilarious, but it would be hilarious if it wasn't typical. We've had Mandalorian-esque retard fights before, but this is even worse than those. Standing out in the open, holding a fucking... for purposes of this, cookie pan out in front of you that bullets should be going straight through anyway, barely even covering your center mass and leaving your entire lower half exposed. And despite that, somehow coming out completely unscathed. Naruto Blood Prison fucking plot armor, dude. And at least in that movie, he does get hurt. If you've never seen that movie, by the way, don't. The Bat guy, I don't remember his name, breaks through the sunroof and lands on one of the guards. Fortunately for this guy who seems to be having the worst day of his life despite doing everything right, Blake's mom heroically charges at the Bat guy with the cookie pan. We cut before we can see what happens. She did not knock him out with that. I swear to God. Don't even. Fuck you, show. Now we're with Blake. We left her last in the Mega Man boss room staring at Elia, who for some reason was just hanging out in here. Did she know Blake would be here? What's this room for? Does it matter? No, moving on. Blake asks if she came in here to hide, which we don't really get an answer to. But it seems like she might have. Regardless, Blake tries to leave and Elia charges her. Fight scene time. Yay. I feel like I say this every time there's a fight, but the fights are still just bad. Sluggish, uninteresting, full of shitty, stilted dialogue. It's nothing new, but I guess it's still worth noting. Moving on, Elia turns out the lights and she uses her chameleon abilities or whatever the fuck to blend in with the dark. It is not convincing. I have this peeve for other things too, but if you mean to have somebody hiding in the dark so another person can't see them, I think it would be more fitting to have it harder for me to see them clearly as well. Sometimes knowing where everything is at every moment can fuck up the tension of the fight, especially if the whole point of the tension is that you can't see them. Here it just fails to create tension where it should. It's strange to me that Blake has no clue where Elia is, but I can see her completely clearly right in front of her. She just looks stupid, which, I guess isn't inaccurate. You'd think the first thing Blake would do in this situation, especially on account of the fact that it's her house and she knows where everything is, would be, to turn the lights back on. Simple enough. Rookie mistake, my dear viewer. That's where you're wrong. Characters in this show don't think, at least not often. And that's precisely why, instead of turning the lights back on, Blake decides on the clearly better and more productive option, which is to light her own house on fire. That's what I would've did. Elia comes out into the light, and we get more fighting before Blake manages to pin her down. And once again, we see Elia flipping sides on a dime, admitting that all of this White Fang activist nonsense is just the only thing she knows how to do. But instead of actually getting anything meaningful between these two, we're immediately interrupted by Blake's dad and son breaking through the wall and quipping. After a while of back and forth between Blake's dad and the clowns, he sends son after Elia. They fight for a few seconds, and then a mild struggle between the two causes a support pillar to fucking crumble and collapse. No. An unimpressive fight between a lightweight and a midweight is not going to cause a solid wood support beam meant to prevent the building it is in from collapsing to instantly crack and collapse itself. The overhang that was held up by the IKEA particle board pillar nearly falls on Elia, but Blake's dad comes to the rescue, assisted by Son and his ghost clone things. Elia gets out, but one of the clowns charges him from behind with his little knife thing. Blake manages to pull him out from underneath, causing the monk clown to get Caesar Zeppeli'd. Fight over, I guess. And finally, Blake's mom enters the room holding the knocked out bat dude. You can't be serious. What are we doing, man? Wasn't this guy supposed to be threatening? And she knocked him out with a fucking serving tray? Oh, I guess fight not over. No fight's over. Never mind. I'm so sick of Elia, dude. Genuinely. She's gone from being conflicted to not conflicted to conflicted but actually not really conflicted, and then conflicted again to now not being conflicted again, maybe sort of. And I think that's where we are. How do you manage to write a character harder to follow than fucking Kylo Ren? Blake's dad carries some of the White Fang's wounded out of the house while a group of guards meet him at the entrance to search for... Wait a second. These people in the uniforms aren't house guards? Scar guy, this guy, says they came as soon as they got called. These aren't guards, they're police. Menagerie police. They have police. You've got to be kidding me. This fucks everything up again. Where were these people the entire time? Did they just ignore the convenient, very public info dump from Elia's phone? Did Blake's family not tell them anything? Is the knowledge that Adam's branch of the White Fang was planning a revolt not more than enough to secure Blake's family and estate beforehand? You'd think after her family found out they were being stalked and spied on, they'd let someone know. And even if they weren't aware of any of these shenanigans until after Blake's dad's speech, which would be insane in its own right, they had no excuse after that happened because they were there. I went back and double checked the scene where he gives the speech, and multiple members of what we now know to be Menagerie's police, which I didn't know weren't private security, were present at the speech. Of course, they couldn't be absolutely sure that the White Fang would attack the house, but releasing sensitive information in this way most definitely put a target on the family's back. Where were the police the entire time? Why weren't they doing what they exist to do? Oh god, it keeps going. Blake goes down the front steps and gives a recruitment speech to the crowd, which ironically begins with her pointing to the smoke coming from the fire she started and stating boldly that humans didn't do this, we did this. We? Blake, you did that. You get the picture. She does her whole inspirational speech and convinces the crowd to come with her to Haven to stop Adam, proving to all of them finally that Adam and the White Fang are a credible threat that warrants confronting. She even manages to win over Elia, who after announcing that fact is immediately seized by the Scar guy for good reason. Serious grounds for several criminal charges with extra terrorism multiplier on this one. Blake immediately has him let her go. He, bafflingly, asks if she's just going to forgive her, and she says yes. I don't think that's your line, Scar Guy. I think it should be she's under arrest and we're taking her in, period. Remember, you're not house guards, you're police. Upholding the law is your prime objective. Are we really doing this show? Assault and battery more times than I can count, attempted murder more than a few times, kidnapping, stalking, breaking and entering, conspiracy to commit an assassination, and willing participation in an attempted one. The arson was Blake's fault, so I won't count that. All of which could probably be considered terrorism considering her affiliations. And you're just gonna let her off the hook because Blake forgives her suddenly? Of course they don't know all of that right now, right this second, but the fact that she was here, having been an active participant in an attempt to kill Blake's entire family, feels like some probable cause to start doing some digging. Call me crazy. That all aside, Blake manages to sway basically the entire crowd to her cause. But that's only step one, you see. They've got 2 weeks before Adam's attack is planned to happen, and they have that amount of time to supply, train, and transport a militia force to Mistral. Tall order to say the least. I hope we get to see some of that. That could be an interesting little arc. Back with the IQ deficiency, whatever the hell I called him before, they approach Haven Academy's main hall, and when they enter they meet Lionheart. He notes that there are more of them than last time, and asks why they all have their weapons. As Crow mentions, they are huntsmen, and also, dude, you have your weapon. I know you're like a pathetic moron, because that's the way we do things here, but that's the thing you don't say out loud. Getting straight to the point, Crow asks if they're getting support from the council, but all of that goes out the window when suddenly Raven. Through more nigh unlistenable Raven monologuing, we learn that Lionheart's been colluding with Raven the whole time, who reveals herself to have been colluding with Cinder and the rest of the Funky Bunch by conveniently teleporting them in. Well, except for Watts. Did he just actually fuck off like Cinder told him to? That's kind of based. Even good old Duff McWhalen's here, sealing the entrance and telling them the White Fang's preparing to demolish the school. We then see Adam's guys planting charges, complete with what might be Adam's worst voice acting so far. Jeez. I listened to it so you don't have to. It's revelation time for the gang, anyway. Crow asks how long Raven's been with Salem, but Cinder butts in and says that was a recent endeavor. What the fuck was that? Benny? Is that TF2 Gold Rush? No, it's the Crazy Frog Discord server. I just got a fucking notification in the Crazy Frog Discord server. Knockoff Subway Surfers? They made a knockoff Subway Surfers game. And that's what I just got pinged for in the Crazy Frog official Discord server. What the fuck? Lionheart, on the other hand, has evidently been in cahoots with the Funky Bunch since as far back as before Volume 3. He apparently was the one that entered Cinder and her Nakama of retards into the Vital tournament, which kind of defeats the point Volume 3 was trying to make about the fragility of Vale's institutions by confirming that actually Vale was completely secure. It was Mistral all the way across the world that was subverted, but whatever, I'm gonna ignore that because it doesn't matter. And while it doesn't necessarily damage the plot that we know all of this, I'd say it's what we in the business call lame. What I mean is, since we knew about Lionheart's treachery from square one, actually square zero, instead of leading the viewer on and forcing them to question whether or not Lionheart was a trustworthy guy over the course of the season, like the characters have to, which you could do some cool things with and work around in interesting ways, we're basically just waiting for the gang to find out he's a traitor for 10 out of 14 episodes. The missing, dead, huntsman was all him. He had access to information on just about every huntsman in the kingdom and gave it all to Salem, concludes Crow. So Lionheart was responsible for the deaths of an untold amount of huntsmen. Like, comical amounts of huntsmen, to the point where Crow couldn't find a single one in all of Mistral. And nobody found out. No police investigation into a mass death incident that would have inevitably led them straight to the council and straight to Lionheart? Nothing? Why? Oh, huntsmen die all the time, man, but not all at once and not fucking all of them. Surely that warrants investigating. And are there no police here? I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I'm not. This is a completely different plotline with the exact same problem. How did this get past the writer's room? John isn't able to handle breathing the same air as Cinder for very long, understandably, and is the first to initiate the inevitable big end-of-season fight scene. He charges at her and enters a dramatic movie swordlock with her, and to provide support, RWBY decides to jump up instead of teleporting behind Cinder and putting a 40 caliber round square in her back. Here we go again with the fucking rifle. You know, I'm surprised this is all happening so soon. It's only episode 11. Tell me this won't last 4 whole episodes, please. And 20 seconds in, we're already encountering the problem of the writers not having object permanence. Whenever we cut to somebody new, it's a total crapshoot whether or not any of the other characters are present in the frame where they should be, or whether or not we can hear the canned fight audio being played in the background, which, by the way, for some reason sounds distant, like they're almost 10 feet away at any given time. This has nothing to do with anything. You're just nitpicking. While I do agree that the plot and the character should come first in a critique like this, and they have, I think it would be wrong to ignore the complete and total eyesore that's been put in front of me. Because, and I can't stress this enough, many superficial failures tend to go over my head. In the past, I've had absolute legends in my comment sections pointing out instances of horrid animation or continuity errors with previous volumes that I managed to miss because I'm retarded and my memory sucks. So if you manage to make a fight scene that is so blatantly terrible that I can nitpick it, you're just fucked. Like, I don't know what to say. Point being, we're gonna dig into this. It's really bad. But anyway, we have our matchups. Crow and Raven, Ruby and Emerald, Yang and Mercury, Weiss and Lesbian Haircut, Mango Boy and Lionheart, John and Cinder, and finally, Ren, Nora, and Duff McWhalen. I just can't help but think that this room should be complete pandemonium right now. Like, it's, what, a 7v8 in a room of this size? You ever seen how shit used to get on Lijiang Tower in a 6v6 game back in the good old days? With the scope of all these characters' abilities and weapons and everything, it's kind of inconceivable that this fight isn't raw hell. Of course, that would introduce some clarity problems, but there have to be better ways to remedy that than just deleting all the other characters from the scene every time you switch perspectives. That's the coward's way out. It's especially blatant here with Nectarine Boy and Lionheart, where they don't even try. Everyone else just disappears from the room, and the canned fight audio even cuts out. This lasts for like 2 whole minutes, and then immediately after, everyone's right back to fighting again. Oh, and this one's a Hall of Famer, for sure. Lionheart's got his dumb shield gun weapon thing, and he takes like 30 seconds to wind it up and fire. And the whole time, Apricot Boy just stands there, staring at him, while a giant rock manifests from thin air and launches at him, very slowly. Of course, he's fine, because aura and height moments, but it's a 3-hour telegraph. Get the fuck out of the way. Also, this is gonna get worse later on, I'm sure of it, but people don't have sensitive conversations about their motivations and backstory while actively trying to kill each other. Like, you can have your dumb, cringe, swordlock dialogue, I don't care, but there's just something incredibly jarring and funny about Emerald reiterating part of her backstory while trying to shoot Ruby in the face. So you're trying to kill her. Imagine if one of those bullets hit. She's dead, mid-explanation. It's also just fucking wild that she's shooting directly forward, point blank, instead of acting on the one character trait she actually has and fighting subversively. Like, clearly this isn't working. There's gotta be a hole in the defense or weak spot you can try to exploit. You know, just like any part of Ruby that's not blocked by the long, thin stripe that is her weapon at any given time, just fucking aim down. Her weapon gives her no cover, you have 2 guns. You can just shoot 2 different spots on her and you'll hit her. Also, during this exchange, everyone has once again been deleted from the room besides John and Cinder, who exist solely to distract Ruby for 4 milliseconds. Emerald gives Ruby a hallucination of Cinder or whatever to distract her and almost cuts off her legs, prompting Ruby to shoot Weiss? Either way, she misses, so no harm done. Moving over to Weiss, she gets her aura depleted by Lesbian Haircut because she can't figure out trying to summon in the middle of a 1v1 might be a bad idea, and in response, Cinder makes her sword into a fire sword. It causes Ruby to have a PTSD flashback to a better season, and her Sharingan Genjutsu activates. But before it can do whatever it's supposed to do, Emerald slaps her in the back, negating most of it? What, is this an Overwatch ult now? This is 2 references to Overwatch. Are we nerfing Silver Eyes because we need the bad guys to be threatening? Before we can think about any of that, Cinder goes down. So it was nerfed, just not negated entirely. And John goes in for a kill shot, except he's retarded. In a fucking wild inverse Mace Windu move, he decides to thrust his sword straight at her face, which she very easily dodges. Swing at her neck! Swing at her neck, chop her head off. You have a giant sword. Come on. Across the room, Weiss goes down again, and Cinder manifests a giant javelin, because maiden, I guess. She proceeds to nail Weiss with it from across the room at a straight throwing angle with no aim or wind-up. Fuck all this Funky Bunch nonsense. Get her ass on the red side. For some reason, this causes every other person in the room to pause their fighting and stare at Weiss, even the Funky Bunch members. Seems to me like a pretty decent time for all of you to go in for the kill, since none of you particularly care about Weiss and you're not exactly fair fighters. Maybe Duff McWhalen I can believe having that level of respect, but definitely not the rest of you. Why are you doing nothing? Regardless, Weiss is dead for the time being. They try to wake Ruby up while Lionheart tells Duff McWhalen that Persimmon Boy is actually Ozpin, and for some reason he gets really pissed at that. He proceeds to take dust crystals and stab himself with them. Now, I didn't know that was something you could do. I'd have thought sending electrically charged ammunition into your bloodstream would probably kill you, but evidently it makes you go Super Saiyan, more you know. Raven, Cinder, and Lesbian Haircut have Lionheart open the vault and start heading down. Yang goes to follow them, but gets held up by Mercury and Emerald. Kumquat Boy? is getting his ass beat by Duff McWhalen when we get a backstory lesson from Ozpin. In short, his sister died in a boating accident training mission at Beacon, and now he's mad at Ozpin and wants to kill him. I would then raise a question as to why he'd decide to ally with somebody who just wants everyone to die, but maybe we're beyond reason here. Tangelo boy... Tangelo boy? Tangelo boy... Tangelo boy... What the fuck is a Tangelo? I wrote this? Asked if she knew the risks, said she made a choice, and he has too, you know the drill. Duff McWhalen proceeds to invoke Saruman, fuck you show, keep Lord of the Rings out of your mouth. And Ozpin takes Tangerine Boy over to fight him. Tangelo in front of Tangerine? What is a Tangelo? What the fuck is this real? Is Tangelo a real thing? This is a real thing? Tangelo. Was like an orange with a dick? And Ozpin takes Tangerine Boy over to fight him. We're back to John and Ren. Weiss is still dead. Well, almost dead. John and Ren don't really know what to do, aforementioned absence of a healer and all, since they're blocked off from anywhere they could take her to tend to the giant hole in her stomach. Rough stuff. But right when everything seems hopeless, you knew this was gonna happen, John's semblance activates for the first time out of the blue. Fuck you, show. Having it activate now, the moment he needs it completely unearned? You cannot be serious. He barely even knows Weiss. Where was all this when Crow got poisoned? He knows him just about as well. What makes this any different? I know, broken record, but this would have been a lot easier if one of you knew how to deal with things like this. Cinder, Raven, and lesbian haircut girl head down into the vault. Cinder asks lesbian haircut if she's honored to be the first maiden to open a vault in however long, and lesbian haircut responds with the same Raven diatribe of I only care about my tribe, yada yada. Like she was given a script to read lines from in universe too. You could have maybe given her lines a little more. Tell us a little bit about how she feels about Cinder, or something. But this is RWBY. I asked too much. They make it into the vault, and Cinder remarks that it's grander than Beacon's. I have questions. I'm annoying, aren't I? Was the relic in Beacon's vault, or was it not? If it wasn't, then what was? What did Ozpin mean when he said it would be more challenging? Why were you down there? You did go in. That was where you fought Ozpin? Why are these vaults so easy to get into? One key held by one guy is enough to open vaults that lead to the apparently most powerful things ever to exist ever? You'd think they would implement a two-person rule or something. Come on, bare minimum. I mean, we know why Beacon was so easy. It's because the people in charge of guarding it were either retarded or children. But this is ridiculous, dude. The one guy in charge of guarding this vault is compromised, and you have zero safeguards in case that happens. No security, no police. Well, we're gonna get into that later. Duff McWhalen being a viable combatant here is actually fucking crazy, by the way. The show is only able to allow him to survive by pretending the only person capable of fighting him is the guy slapping him in the face with a cane. The guy's the size of a near automata boss, dude. Are none of the people in the room capable of shooting him? Ruby's back up and she has a literal sniper rifle. Ren's got pistols. Nora has a grenade launcher. Crow has a shotgun or whatever, but he's distracted. Still, you get my point. Half of you have ranged weapons. Use them! And speaking of RWBY, she sees Yang getting her ass kicked by Emerald and Mercury, and Ozpin stalling Duff McWhalen. Why did she do that? She lifts John's magic hands off of Weiss's wound, then tells him to not stop healing her. Like, do I even need to say this stuff anymore? Like, you stopped him. Why? Whatever. She has Ren go help Orange Boy and Crow. We've restarted the orange fruit cycle again because I've run out of them. Nora covered John and Weiss, and she goes to help Yang. Again, by jumping into the fight at melee range. RWBY, please. You have the ability to all but teleport behind any one of these retards and quickscope a 40 caliber sniper round square into their back. It'd at least shatter their aura. Oh god, that's so cringe to say now. So why do you keep engaging these morons from the front? Shoot Emerald in the back with your gun. It'd definitely be more than deserved, and you should know by this point that engaging with these people on fair footing gets you at best nowhere and at worst killed. Remember Penny, RWBY? I've been shown that you do. Once. We're back with Raven, Cinder, and the lesbian haircut who finally find it after all these years. The skill tree. While we're here, I'd like to question why exactly the maidens were the ones entrusted with the ability to open these vaults. Like, I might not be able to remember things I said 5 minutes ago, but I sure as hell can remember that about halfway through Volume 4, Crow told the gang that the schools were founded by Ozpin's predecessor, whatever that means, in order to guard them. I can only imagine these vaults were constructed around that time, since that's when the schools were built. So going with our measure from back then of this happening probably about 50 to 90 years ago, and seeing as we currently know very little about any of the maidens that have ever ever existed, and of the two we've ever seen, both are currently working against Ozpin and by proxy humanity. It just seems a little bit strange that you'd put so much trust into a system that seems almost designed to transfer these powers into the hands of psycho murderers. Regardless of who the maidens were then, and if whoever Ozpin's predecessor was knew them well or not, the system by which the maidens operate has their powers being transferred to whoever they think about last before they die. In the case of one, being killed for their powers, that's basically an instant win for the one killing her. See Cinder. Moving on, right as Lesbian Haircut's about to open the vault door, Cinder impales her and freezes Raven. Candidate for most expected betrayal in television history. I don't need to say much about that. We also discover that Cinder has a grim arm. If we didn't know that already, I forget. She says it's nothing personnel, kid, and we learn that she intends to steal Lesbian Haircut's maiden powers. So she kills her, but no powers come out. Who could the real maiden be? It's actually Raven? No. Fuck you, show. Raven is not the Spring Maiden. I don't care about your stupid fucking fake out. So much aura and hype moment. No, this is retarded. I don't know why you feel the need to make every character in this show, like, bafflingly stupid, but you've done it again, this time to Cinder, who didn't really need a reason to be made more stupid. If this Sans flaming eye thing is an indicator for maidenness and happens every time she uses her powers, which we've been given every reason to believe over the last couple seasons, why didn't Raven's eyes go all Sans when she whipped up that thunderstorm? And say she was like suppressing her mana to deceive demons or some shit. Shouldn't Cinder, a maiden, have noticed that the one apparently using maiden powers didn't have the bright, giant, unusual effect indicator glowing bright red on her face? Is it just voluntary to do that? If it is, why did they do it to start with? Also, if this is all true, I have to assume the actual Spring Maiden that ran away ended up getting killed, presumably by Raven. Then does Lesbian Haircut actually think she is the Spring Maiden? Because if she didn't, I think she should probably be getting a little nervous getting so close to that door, right? Also, this wasn't even in my notes. I was thinking about this when I was writing the script. They know who the Spring Maiden was, actually, don't they? Shouldn't they? She ran away from here, from Haven, or Mistral, or whatever. They know about her, they know she ran and where she ran to, which is vaguely in the same area. Otherwise, Lionheart wouldn't have been able to explain all of that to the gang. Seems to me Haven should at least know her name and what she looked like. It happened recently enough. And you happen to have compromised Haven's literal seriously for real headmaster. Lionheart is working for you, and we've been shown he's certainly not above giving names and faces of people for you to kill. Seems like a smart step in the game plan to cross-check with Lionheart about the actual fucking Spring Maiden that you are looking for before blindly believing the word of Raven Bronwyn, who doesn't trust you or like you, and you don't trust or like either. You've made Cinder retarded 3 times now for the sake of advancing this stupid plot. Can you believe the season's almost over? Just 2 more to go, guys. So Ruby's now fighting Mercury. And again, Ruby, you're at an insane advantage. Your semblance is really good, like cracked. See previous comment about quick-scoping people from behind. Mercury can't do his stupid genjutsu if its rib cage is exploded, just saying. Nora's still guarding John and Weiss, and for some reason is momentarily possessed by the spirit of Carla Tortelli from Cheers. They gave her a Boston accent for 1 line for no reason. Just trust me on that. I'm not going to play the audio, but just trust me on that one. John, for some reason, doesn't understand that he's using a semblance, and doesn't think he's healing her because aura is what heals them. He's just using his aura to amplify hers, he says. So he's healing her. Moving on. Actually, not moving on. I want to talk about this again. This goes beyond lucky crow reaction. If you thought John unlocking his semblance at exactly the right time to save Weiss's life was lucky, imagine the fucking probability of his semblance being the ability to heal, amplify other people's aura at will. And not just that, he's able to readily and consciously use it right now with no prior understanding of how it works. Not only is that insanely lucky, not only is it insanely convenient, but it's just completely contrived. This came out of nowhere. It had no meaningful setup and no development to speak of. It was mentioned once in like episode 3 or 4 or something, and now here it is, ready for immediate use by the scriptwriters. I think, well, maybe this is a tad of a reach, but I think this season misunderstands setup and payoff, like conceptually. Going back a bit, Crow searching for the lost huntsman is touched on 1 time at the beginning of the season, maybe twice, like really briefly. Used as a reason to force our characters to stay put in Mistral and wait for the bulk of the season's runtime. Then, this video's entire script up to this point ago, Crow brings it up again to Ozpin, who like nods in response and basically adds nothing to it. Now, right when the gang Fang arrives at the scene of the big fight, we were pretty much just handed the knowledge that Lionheart sold them out to Salem. It's a payoff, and it has a setup, but there's nothing to it because none of it was earned. It all just happened, and the characters happened to be there when it happened. The only kind of investigative work Crow did was at the very start of the season when he found out the huntsmen were missing. Wow, go figure. But after that, he doesn't look into it any further, at least not that we see or hear about. The mystery as to what happened to them and who obviously killed them is just sat on for the entire season until Cinder explains everything to Crow, solving the mystery for him. And on top of all of that, the audience knew about this from the very beginning. We knew he was in deals with the Fungi Bunch from before Square One. His first appearance on screen. Volume 4 wasn't even over before we knew he was bad news. Why did you write it like this? Setup isn't just randomly throwing a thought out at the start and leaving it in the air for the rest of your story, and payoff is most definitely not just throwing out the answer at the audience near the end, especially when you failed to leave the audience wanting it to start with. Chekhov's shotgun being on the wall in Act 1 doesn't immediately justify the bartender pulling it off the wall and blowing a guy's brains out in Act 3. Even Volume 4 understood that setup requires development in order to be rewarding or meaningful. How have we gotten worse than Volume 4? I feel like I'm losing my mind hearing these characters throw around the term aura. It's not the show, it's me. I've been brain rotted by the fucking solo leveling discourse. Anyway, Weiss wakes up and Ren's getting booty blasted by Duff McWhalen. Maybe I shouldn't call it. Nora goes and jumps in on the Duff McWhalen boss fight and learns from Ozpin that Duff McWhalen's semblance is blocking out pain, which is why he's able to handle injecting dust into his body like he does. I'm not exactly concerned about it hurting, man. That's like electric type dust he's shooting straight into his bloodstream. That's more a death problem, like instant death, like hooking yourself up by exposed wire to a generator and turning it on instant death. Anyway, Nora takes advantage of the fact that Duff McWhalen has decided to charge directly at her in a straight line, and sends him through the front wall and into the courtyard right in front of Adam's... That can't be his whole group. In response, he shoots more dust, this time red. Everyone's looking pretty exhausted and probably won't be able to take him again. Adam instructs his... entire group to stay focused on what you know I don't know. They weren't doing much before. They're about to return to whatever nothing they were doing before when Blake suddenly shows up and tells them to stand down. And during Adam's inevitable pointless villain monologue, we get to see the full scope of his strike team for the first time. 8 people. Adam brought 8 people to try to pull off demolishing a fucking Huntsman Academy. Let's dive into this guy's brain again. You're Adam Taurus. You've just fallen upwards, again, into taking over the entire White Fang. Your chief objective now is to destroy Haven Academy because reasons. If there are reasons, I can't remember them, and probably not good reasons. Some nonsense about sending a message, probably, even though Haven's headmaster is a faunus. Forget you siding with the people that literally want to destroy everything and kill everyone for reasons. We've already gone over that bridge. You know, through communications with your very own monk clowns, that the Belladonnas have been trying to organize the whole of Menagerie against you. Even if you don't know that they've succeeded, you know they've been trying very hard. They've been a big thorn in your side for a long time, after all. And so, guided by that knowledge, you make the intelligent decision to bolster your numbers, which you now have unrestricted access to as the literal fucking high leader of the White Fang, because it's always better to have some more people to guard against counterattacks. Except he doesn't do any of that. He brings 8 fucking people and has them stand in a line out in the open. And before you say, oh, he couldn't have known the attack on the house failed. Why'd I sound like Mr. Frog? It may not feel like it, but it's been 2 weeks since that happened. Unless you want to tell me that every single White Fang operative in the whole of Menagerie was arrested and imprisoned on the night of the attack, and that none of them have any form of communication to anyone else in the White Fang, then this is fucking ridiculous. He should know about this by now. But even then, even if we totally forget Blake and her whole militia thing, we can't forget we have a room full of the other main characters directly behind us. Huntsmen, who have been a problem before. Did Salem tell you this part? Or Cinder? Or whoever came up with this stupid fucking plan in the first place? As an integral part of it, I can't imagine any reason why you wouldn't know that the plan now involves bringing a bunch of potential threats directly into the building you're trying to demolish. Did nobody tell you? Sun announces they didn't come alone and brings forward their whole new Menagerie militia, complete with good White Fang insignia on all their stuff. Would have really liked to see the making of this, you know, all the hard work that went into supplying flying training and transporting the whole island here to fight Adam. It could have been a cool little arc to go on, but we got none of that, and they're just here now. Did you forget that doing all this took time? They said it would take time. Where'd the time go? Adam's somehow shocked by this, and it suddenly becomes strikingly apparent to all of them that they're a team of 9 against the entirety of Menagerie. Totally unavoidable. Could never have seen this coming. These were the most people we could get for the job too. Just a shame. Just a shame. Adam tries to give a pep talk to his team, but suddenly here come the Mistral police. Are you serious? Where have you been the whole time? The whole season? When Infinity Huntsman went missing? When it made the rounds that there was a threat of an attack on Haven that you could not have not heard about? No increased presence or involvement until literally right this second after contact from the Belladonnas? I can't believe I'm saying this again, but the show basically hinges the antagonist's entire plan on whatever law enforcement authorities there are just being inexplicably absent, and then when it's time for them to lose, they just make them exist again so the antagonist can lose. If they did exist this whole time, how did they not know about any of this until now? There's no excuse for this. The antagonist should have lost like 4 times already. Adam's somehow again in disbelief. Blake tells him it's over, but he takes out a remote detonator intending to take the whole place down with him. They don't go off, naturally, and we find that Ilya confirmed and disarmed all of them. I'm just done, man. You just got here. They stopped planning the bombs like 10 minutes ago. In that period of time, Ilya was somehow able to go disarm every one of them, all across the entire school. What the fuck is going on? Adam charges directly at her despite knowing what her semblance is, and gets beat because he's an idiot. He orders his Overwatch team of people to fight, which for some fucking crazy reason doesn't end in them immediately being swarmed and overrun like they should be. There's fucking 8 of them versus all of Menagerie virtually. And now you're trying to make it appear like they have a fighting chance? What are we doing? Duff McWhalen's standing around watching all of this when he gets impaled with a pike blood prison style, don't watch that movie, and pulled back into the building. In classic Volume 5 fashion, when the frame goes to Blake seeing this happen, there's nothing happening around her. Weiss has summoned one of the kamikaze wasp grim things from before, and Duff McWhalen's now surrounded. Quick reunion, and we're back down with Cinder and Raven, who are fighting. I would talk about this really, but my brain is just liquid at this point. Fight scene, fight scene, fight scene. Cinder gets distracted and Raven kills her. For now, anyway. Lesbian haircut's dead, and Raven finally opens the vault with the gay. She sees the relic, but Yang's right behind her, and finally, we've made it to the start of the final episode. With how mind-bendingly retarded these payoffs have been so far, I can only imagine how this is gonna go. Oh Jesus, this episode's another 20 minutes. How long is this video gonna end up being? How long is it now? The White Fang guys surrender pretty quickly, all literally 8 of them. Blake and Adam stand beside all of it, talking at each other, despite the fact Adam should probably be #1 priority for the police you just manifested from thin air. Like, I'm talking constant spotlight dropship thing directly overhead shooting at him right now priority. Adam says he's made powerful friends while Blake was away, to which their response is, where and are they coming? Fair enough. Blake and Sun basically take this opportunity to rightly mock the fact Adam brought 8 people. Well, actually they don't do that. I'm the one that's been doing that. They're treating it as this being all Adam could muster, 8 people being literally the best he could do for this, which is just wrong. Not true. This guy's the fucking high leader of the White Fang. He could have assigned a battalion to this assignment if he had the sense to. He's not without allies, he's just been lobotomized. We seem to have undergone a tonal 180 on Adam out of nowhere. Suddenly, Blake and Sun are talking as though Adam's just no big deal and they have better things to be dealing with right now than him. They fight him again for 2 seconds and he runs away. What are we doing? Right now, at this very second, after all this effort to get here to confront him, you decide to suddenly go, oh, Blake's here for Haven. Adam's not worth her time. How do you forget what you just wrote? Blake's entire chunk of this season has been spent attempting to rally Menagerie to fight Adam Taurus at Haven. That was the whole point. The end goal. What do you mean he's not worth your time? I don't particularly like Adam Taurus, and I never really did. I think I've made that pretty clear over the course of all these videos. That said, you've dedicated a large part of the last few seasons to trying to build up Adam as a real, credible threat, staging attacks in Vale, being present at the fall of Beacon for reasons, cutting off Yang's arm for reasons, taking over the White Fang, attacking Blake's house. None of this indicated that Adam was supposed to be a pushover. Sure, there's the aforementioned lobotomy, and there were plenty of places where he should have failed instantly before, but at least the plot armor was consistently applied. At least we were consistently bad. Despite it not making any sense, you, the writers, managed to force Adam Taurus into this position of power and influence. You spent all this valuable time building up to his attack on Haven, and your payoff is this shit? He just gets instantly instantly overpowered because Blake brought adequate manpower and he didn't? What the fuck kind of villain is this guy supposed to be? He had more soldiers present at the assassination of High Leader plot device than at his big mission. What the fuck is he doing? The position of High Leader is one you've made out to command a good amount of respect. Adam should be highly dangerous just by virtue of being here. He had to kill the last one to get to the top, remember? And Blake certainly shouldn't be so dismissive about confronting him. But since you either forgot or just refused to show him that respect, he just ends up looking like an idiot. And the audience has no reason to show him that respect either. He's a fucking clown. I don't think I can stress enough that literally none of this occurred naturally. Adam here was put here by you at the cost of breaking the rest of the story. A large part of Blake's arc this season was already heavily damaged by the fact that if anyone in this world had any sense, Adam would not be High Leader right now. But as much as it did damage the story, he was at least where you wanted him to be, and now for reasons I can't even imagine, you're trying to use the same force, damaging the story more, to pull him out of that position out of nowhere. I don't like using loaded terms like insulting, generally preferring more respectful lexicon such as retard and lobotomite, but regardless, this is kind of insulting. You surgically remove Adam Torres' brain from his skull, again, and move every piece on the board around in order to force him to fail, and you expect me to be stupid enough to not notice. What the fuck, show? If I was like a Hero Hey or a Nerdrotic, I'm sure I'd be reading between the lines looking for intent, and pulling some kind of veiled misandrist attitude out of this, what with Adam being built up as a threat and being artificially made to fail before being lectured and treated like he's not worth anyone's time. But personally, for me, the lines themselves are already so bad that if I even began to read between them, I think I might melt into something Ashens would eat on video. In short, go fuck yourself, show. Get out of here. So Blake and Sun split up, and we cut back to the gang featuring Big Kamikaze Bug whatever, still locked in mortal combat against Duff McWhalen, Emerald, and Mercury. Despite being like septuple teamed, Duff McWhalen is trucking the fuck on, just refusing to die. Suddenly, Blake. Now he's getting octuple teamed, I suppose. Ruby remembers how to shoot people, forcing Lionheart to retreat, back down to Raven and Yang. How did the maiden powers transfer to Raven, asks Yang. Raven gives a Raven answer, and Yang rightly deduces that that fucking obviously means she killed her. The ensuing confrontation is essentially another main character to minor antagonist lecture about everything that's wrong with her. Show. Hey, show. Raven should be ignoring Yang right now. She should be going for the relic, show. Be consistent with the shitty character you wrote. If you wanted Raven to care about what Yang has to say, you should have put that in half a season ago. Don't do this. They do it. They make Raven suddenly go good guy and let Yang take the relic. This wasn't earned. You can't just make Raven have a complete change of heart after a 1.5-minute long argument with somebody she doesn't give a shit about. The Raven Bronwyn you established in the time you gave her would have told Yang to fuck off and took the relic for herself. Don't even try to say she wouldn't. Remember the tribe being all that matters? You didn't work her character out of that. There was no arc. There was no setup that, oh, Raven actually really cared a little about Yang the whole time. If it happened, we didn't see it. So Yang takes the relic and cries. Moving on. Lionheart escapes to his office and is visited by the probe droid again. Salem asks for an explanation, and Lionheart actually just tells her the whole truth. Yes, this was all Cinder's fault. She brought Crow and the gang here, armed. If there was anyone to blame for not telling Adam that there would be a considerable threat to them here, Blake or otherwise, it would be Cinder. So obviously Salem kills him for no reason. This is all so tiresome. Again, literally zero of this was his fault. It was a retarded plan from the start, and it was made exponentially more retarded by Cinder altering it to have the gang brought to the school. Then it was made even more retarded than that by relying on the gang to show up without their weapons so they could be killed easily. The blame for this lies entirely on Cinder. Lionheart was just bait. He helped you, man. He sold out all of the huntsmen to you, and you just kill him cause you're libad. Why? Also, good fucking going, killing the headmaster of a Huntsman Academy in his office with your probe droid, really trying to operate in secret. Then again, there'd be no repercussions for that. This is RWBY. Yang comes back up to the surface with the relic, and Emerald cries. Suddenly, Salem jump scare, allowing Duff McWhalen and the other two to escape. The fight is over, and the good morons won. Adam got away also, but he was the only one to get away. According to Elia, the people of the White Fang won't support a leader that abandons them. I mean, nobody should have to start with, but still. Reunion time, for reals. The team's back together and they're fine and dandy-ish. Now they take the relic to Atlas, per Ozpin's instruction. Still not sure what it does. Season over. Okay, so how do I even cap off a series like this? I hope I've done a good job outlining exactly how much of a disaster this was and why over however long this series has ended up being. It's been a really rewarding project, even if it has taken a shitload of time and work to put out. I think I'll preface my great big conclusion segment with this. I don't really know what Monty Ohm's vision for RWBY going forward was. I haven't researched it in depth, and I really don't care. I care about what we ended up with. It doesn't matter what he wanted to make, because we got this instead. We could have not gotten this anyway, because nothing has to be written poorly, but the people in charge of writing this were the people in charge of writing this. They probably think they wrote Citizen Kane. Not only now are the characters not characters anymore, but instead of just being sponges for exposition, they're now just puppets for the writers to make what they want to happen. RWBY inexplicably barging in on an important interrogation to kindly inform the viewers that things are bad, Cinder altering the plan and kicking out Watts for zero good reason, Crow asking no questions about the missing huntsman until the script decides to reveal the answer to him, Ilya flipping between sides whenever it's convenient for the next plot thing to happen, Duff McWhalen not thinking at all about his own motivations, Adam conveniently evading consequences for being stupid until the script says it's time for him to fail, and then he just instantly loses. To name a few. We get a few character moments near the middle of the season that border on acceptable, but they're instantly forgotten the minute we return to big dumb fight scenes and retarded plot nonsense. And one of the more common defenses of awful stories like this that I see often is, well, human beings aren't rational creatures, so it's not fair to treat them as though they are. Which, fair enough to an extent, but you have to realize that the logical conclusion of what you're saying is that thinking isn't real and nobody does it. At least not to the point where portraying someone doing so in a piece of fiction would resemble reality in any meaningful way. Sure, human beings aren't completely rational people whose decisions are based entirely off of logical reasoning, but they're also not rabid monkeys who run around their entire lives sticking their fingers in their asses and screaming at everything. Oh, well, not you. I think it's entirely reasonable to expect characters who, especially in the context of this narrative, should have the capacity for even just a small amount of thinking, which is all that'd be needed to avoid some of the season's biggest story problems, to do that, even just a little bit. But the problem is, this ass-cringe plot requires that the characters don't do any. If Cinder stops to consider the merits of her plan, even for a second, the big fight scene at the end doesn't happen. If RWBY stops to consider the importance of the conversation happening in front of her, Crow may have been able to get damning information out of Lionheart. If Duff McWhalen considers what the alternative to Ozpin actually means, his entire motivation falls apart. It just doesn't work. The plot can't function on its own. Speaking of which, the plot is, I don't even know if I have words to describe the plot. It relies entirely on contrivances, asspulls, dumb luck, and the characters not bothering to give any thought to their state of affairs whatsoever. The Spring Maiden happening upon the Bronwyns. Weiss happening upon the Bronwyns. Yang happening upon the Bronwyns. The CCT outage extending to the entire world, actually, because we need Menagerie to not be able to communicate with the rest of the world, despite that not making any sense. Cinder not ever verifying the Spring Maiden's identity with Lionheart before going through with the plan. The police in several places just conveniently not existing for 90% of the season, and then conveniently existing again at the very end when we need a get-out-of-jail-free card for Blake and whoever else. Raven being the Spring Maiden now, even though that doesn't make any sense. Salem killing Lionheart, despite Cinder being the one actually responsible for the plan failing, just to name a few. But ultimately, the main takeaway from Volume 5, I think, is that it seems to expect you, the viewer, to take a story away from it that it doesn't tell. It expects you to assume that what it wants to happen is happening, or that what it's forced to happen despite the rest of the story is just happening now, and that there's nothing wrong with it. Raven has seemingly bottomless knowledge about Team RWBY, despite being a wild hermit tribe person who doesn't give a shit. Ozpin is actually morally gray, and you don't know whether you should trust him, despite there being basically nothing to morally implicate him with, and his terrible secret being that he's fighting a war against the antagonist who wants to kill everybody. Salem and the Funky Bunch are really big and bad and threatening, and no one can stop them, despite the fact that they've been lobotomized, because the main characters have also been lobotomized. They basically defeat themselves by altering their plan. Salem and Ozpin are bitter rivals fighting for the fate of humanity, but they've been doing nothing for the past forever. Adam is an important and dangerous threat that needs to be confronted before he brings down an entire Huntsman Academy, but actually no, suddenly he's just an idiot chump pushover who's not worth anyone's time. What is the point of the season? Is there a message? Does it matter? No. We get a couple instances of vague gesturing at forgiveness, but other than that, there's basically nothing. Not that if there was a theme of any kind it would work, since then we would have just have had a season that failed miserably at getting its point across, along with failing at being good. I think it warrants saying that Volume 5 is not solely responsible for how tragically awful it is. After all, I made a whole other series before this about the preceding season. Ugh. Much of the foundation and setup for this was done within Volume 4, and as such a lot of the problems are actually partially Volume 4's fault. Nonsensical world building taking precedent over the actual story, a plot with more holes than Camp Green Lake, characters gutted and robbed of everything that made them unique, just generally retarded story beats. It all began back then. Well, RWBY wasn't innocent to start with, it had its problems, but oh my god, it got so bad. That said, Volume 5 still manages to be markedly worse than its predecessor, and it's still responsible for what's wrong with it. This season began, persisted, and ended as an unsalvageable train wreck. In short, it's bad, chat. That's that. 10,000 words and probably 45 minutes later, Volume 5's a wrap. Let me know if you'd like to see more of this kind of thing, probably on to Volume 6 if so. That'll be all from me this time. Leave a like and subscribe if you're still around for this sentence and you like what you see, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.